Hello, buddy. All right, welcome to the Mikestand, everybody. Today is Monday, February the 5th, 2025. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. So hopefully everybody had a good weekend. We're now into May here. Of course, 3 weeks away from Memorial Day. Some people might call that the unofficial start of the summertime. The first that one big holiday right before summer begins, as schools are letting out and everybody's excited about getting ready to go to the beach more. You know. Hmm. Oh, anyways, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions best of my ability. Of course, I'm also just waiting on see if we can get some more people in here before we talk about what's on tap for tonight. So let me see if I can get any other anything we like possibly get some more people to drop in. We're venture in here. All right, let's see. Nobody. All right, let's see. Yeah. So let's see. Did watch some interesting cartoons today. You know, Betty Boop in one of her two cartoons where she co-starred with Wiffle Piffle, who's usually from the Screen Song series for Fleischer back in the 30s. There, um, saw Porky Pig trying to fight a bull in another cartoon. So Oswald Rabbit, hanging out with some birds, among other things. All right, so that we're past the 3 minute mark, so I might as well. So tonight, we got a couple of articles we're going to go over. Both more or less anime related articles, as our old friend Daniela Pineda has got some, I guess, is calling on Hollywood to do a better job adapting anime. Now, of course, it's also coming from the same woman who's who was who went off on a tangent about just because I don't fit the certain build, therefore she kind of went off on that kind of build, if you guys remember, and it was kind of some of that commentary, this coming from a girl who was set to play Faye Valentine in the Netflix Cowboy Bebop, you know, live anime adaptation. So we'll be looking at that article. We'll also be looking at apparently the director who worked on Evangelion, Mobile Suit Gundam, GQUX. Director wanted series protagonists to be opposite of nervous and introversion Yukari. So I do those two articles tonight, and of course we'll get into the wrestling wrap up. Get you all caught up on what happened over the happened on Friday Night SmackDown, as well as tonight, as well as Saturday's AEW Collision. We'll look ahead to tonight's Raw, as tonight's Raw, of course, will be the Go Home Raw before the. Hey, if it shows up. Thanks for popping in. If you can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, anyways, as I was just saying, we'll be also looking ahead to tonight's Raw as it'll be the go home Raw before this Saturday's Backlash. Get caught up on some of the updated match card for this Saturday. And then we'll wrap things up, of course, with this day in each history. So with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started here. Let's get started by bringing on the news articles in. Again, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. You guys remember this was the girl who kind of went off on a bit of a tangent about the over sexualization of characters in anime, which got a lot of heat for that. And then it was, of course, discovered later that she was in, I guess, another movie she was in was in a somewhat of a risque position, as it were. So, anyways, Netflix's Cowboy Bebop star Daniela Pineda calls on Hollywood to do a better job when adapting anime. Now, just for you guys who don't know, Daniela Pineda was the actress who was cast to play Faye Valentine in Netflix's live-action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. And as the movie had issues and didn't get over with the fans, some of it was due to the fact of Daniela and some of her comments on, oh, just because I don't have a particular size butt or whatever, you're gonna get on me about being Faye, So, anyways, article by Spencer McCooley, published this past Friday the 2nd. So let's get into this. Speaking from first-hand experience, Netflix's live-action Cowboy Bebop star Daniela Pineda believes that Hollywood needs to start treating the popular anime IPs they become so obsessed in adapting with the proper respect that not just the source material but also its fans deserve. Well, a good start to that is like what they did with One Piece, where you stick to what the artist's original vision for the anime was and don't try to change it to fulfill narratives. There's the anime version of Faye Valentine, who in the Japanese was voiced by Megumi Hayashibara, and in the English it was Wendy Lee who provided. There's a drop on Sanson, who was voiced in the Japanese by Yuji Ueda. Cowboy Bebop's knocking on heaven's door, too. Pineda, who appeared in the disastrous live-action adaptation of Shinichiro Watanabe's seminal work as its version of Faye Valentine, offered her thoughts on the American film industry's ongoing ignorance as to the, in small quote, heart, what makes various animes so beloved to their given fan bases, while speaking to The Direct on the red carpet for The Account 2, which she stars in alongside the Punisher star John Bernthal and returning lead Ben Affleck. Hey, Metal. I try not to remember her. Yeah, I think most people do. I mean, this is actually the first time in a long time I've even mentioned her. So in my canon, Cowboy Bebop never had a Western live action adaptation. It was just one of those Mandela effect confusions. Yeah. Well, I remember I had a bit of fun with it because she was coming out and talking about Faye's character and the emphasis on her on her sexiness and how just because I don't fit the bill of a particular fashion that doesn't make me any less. I remember that whole bit, and then it came out later. I guess in a previous film she did, she was kind of in a risque position where where she basically was in one scene, I guess, on all fours or something. That's when I came up with that little special little nickname for her, you know, and had fun with that for a while, but then stopped after a while because again, you know, yeah, fun with it for a while, and then you just let it go. But anyways, um, back to the article here. Asked by the outlet as to whether or not she had any thoughts on Cowboy Bebop's swift cancellation, Netflix announced its decision just 3 weeks after it premiered. The actress asserted, quote, I feel like those animations, they mean so much to people, and they're so personal, and I think people really connect to when they watch it and the point of their lives. And so I just feel like, and I'll say this, having been in one, I think that those studios, they need to do a better job at valuing that IP. Well, again, the first thing you do in valuing the IP is staying true to the artist's original vision and not trying to, not trying to reimagine it in whatever your quote unquote woke mindset feels. Hmm. Quote, it's really special, unquote, she added. And people on Bebop, Netflix's Bebop, brackets there, they worked very, very hard, but in parentheses or in brackets, the original anime is just a special thing, unquote. Continuing her thoughts, Pineda then acknowledged, quote, and I understand why the fans felt the way that they did, but I also think that there's a lot of really cool, wonderful things that we did, unquote. Well, the fact that you were just kind of lambasting Faye's character and you know just you know the aspect of her Faye's sexiness being part of the storyline there, Danielle, it kind of makes your comments kind of moot here. Quote, and I also wish that we could have gotten the second season, unquote. She told her host, quote, you know, sometimes you just need one season to get things going, and then you prove yourself, unquote. Spike, John Cho and Faye Danielle Pineda are shocked by Whitney's Christine Dunford boldness in Cowboy Bebop season one. So 7, Galileo Hustle. Admittingly, while it seems like Pineda's heart is in the right place, and whether or not she actually means it or said so under advisement from a PR coach, will understandably be a matter of debate. Unparentheses. Given just how badly the live action series mangled the source material, it's unlikely that even given an infinite amount of seasons to do so, Netflix's Cowboy Bebop could have righted its ship. Again, they tried to wokeify it, and it just did not go over well with it. She's talking about how she's kind of talking about how Hollywood needs to respect the material, but she herself did not necessarily respect the material. Let's see. I personally think the West shouldn't be overlooking all the great books made in the USA to adapt British cartoons from Japan. Well, okay, first um, Cowboy Bebop is not a fetish cartoon. Okay, it's a space opera. It's basically a space opera. Okay, now part of what drives the show, of course, is Faye, and is obviously the crew of it's the interactions between Jet, Spike, and Faye, and Faye being kind of the sexy femme fatale does drive part of the show. Okay, but it's not it's basically about them like being bounty hunters in space and going after criminals and all that. But don't think. Um, Sure, more episodes could have allowed the writing team to bring the characters' personalities more in line with their anime counterparts. That's ultimately just a surface level (parentheses albeit important) aspect of the series' identity. Well, the core problem why the live action the core problem with why the live action adaptation failed was because they tried, instead of going with the artist's vision for this show, they tried to adapt it to quote unquote Western sensibilities. Okay. And the problem whenever Hollywood tries to adapt something to Western sensibilities, okay, that spells trouble. Because a lot of the reason why people in the West like anime from Japan because it's real, you know. Um, I don't want, you know, now, yeah, I watch a dub, that's true, and, to help me follow the story better, in terms of understanding what's being spoken. But as we've seen in the last few years, that, with a lot of the localizations that have been happening, we don't need, like Katrina Leonidakis's view on how, the patriarchal world of, kind of foolishness. Japan, I don't think they really think all that much about that kind of stuff. Oddly, Japan has more respect for Western works than the West currently does. They are readapting Anne of Green Gables, the first anime being scene for scene accurate to the book. But when you say the first Anne of Green Gables, when you're saying the first Anne of Green Gables anime, are you talking about the one from 1979? You're talking about the one from 1979, Metal. That's the one I'm watching right now, and that's actually a pretty good anime. And the South African voice crew actually did a good job with the English dub on that. Help me make more cartoons. Here, go. All right. There isn't a dub. I usually just read the manga. Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm currently reading. I'm currently watching that right now. That is a very cute anime. I'm watching you know um watching the English dub of that, and it's actually pretty good. You know, you almost like lose your you. It's almost easy to lose yourself in it. That's how good it is. And Anne Shirley is gonna be a redo of it with modern animation. Yeah, I did hear something about that. I think there might be a Anne Shirley anime already out because I think I saw that on the site that you and I talk a lot about off the camera here, as it were. But anyways, back to the article here. In the end, short of either starting over from square one or messily attempting to get everything into place, which I think starting over square one should be the thing. The damage is already done, thanks to such, in smaller quotes, creative decisions as overtly showing Vicious as being abusive towards Julia, or Jet having a wife and daughter. The series already lost sight of the core, in smaller quotes, space western story that captured the fans of the original. Oh, and not to mention that the first season was Spike's clock tower set, final battle scene against Vicious, an event that actually served as the conclusion to the original anime. In other words, thought Pineda th- thought Pineda thinks a second season could have, in smaller quotes, proven itself as a worthy adaptation. One wonders how that's possible it's when it's when it would have been um, composed of largely new or at least heavily modified material. Capping off her time with the direct, Pineda ultimately asked if she could, I guess, could take a moment to clarify, quote unquote, her infamously aggressive video response to those critics who were unhappy with the reveal of Faye's live action of. Yes, that's what I was talking about. That's what I've been referring to this throughout this whole article. She People were not happy because, you know, Faye being a sexually driven character, basically Faye being kind of the femme fatale and, you know, utilizing her sexuality being a big part of the story. Um, um, big part of the story there. She just went off on people who said, "Well, we don't like her because she doesn't let, or she's not like Faye, or she's not like the Faye we know." Oh, didn't realize already started. Just looked, and Crunchyroll already has. But yeah, well, on the one site you and I have talked about before that I won't mention right now, live on air. Um, there is a listing for Anne Shirley on there, so you might want to, if you want to, you might want to go check that out. But anyways, I make sure I watch at least one episode before Super Serial Showtime. Hmm. Let's see. Quote, so years ago, when the franchise came out on Netflix, years ago, like she sounds like it was such a long time. I think it might have been 4 or 5 years ago. I guess now that you think about it. But so years ago, when the franchise came out on Netflix, I was shooting a movie in Puerto Rico. I was goofing off, and I made some. I'm not used to anyone watching my videos, and I made this dumb video, kind of poking fun at myself because I was getting all these DMs from people saying like, "quote You're terrible and you're fat. Go away." Just like awful, awful messages. Unquote. She explained. Quote. So I just made this like on a whim in brackets Instagram story, just joking about the fact that like quote small quote. Sorry guys, I'm sorry I was cast. Unquote. Said Pineda. Quote, and I use the word fans, in small quotes, when I meant to say trolls, and then it caught wind, and everybody was like, small quotes, she's hating on the fans, and I was like, this is getting lost in translation. I'm responding to trolls, not fans, and it got really swept up anyway. I just had to put that out there. Yes, his video response though was pretty infamous in the fact that she just went off on because people were critical of the fact that maybe she wasn't the Faye Valentine that most people have come to know in the anime. That they were a little upset about that. So, anyways, there's that one. Let's see. All right. So, anyways, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. I will be right back. So, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So let's get on to the next article here. The other one I'm going to go over tonight here. After working on Evangelion, Mobile Suit Gundam, GQUX director wanted series protagonist to be opposite of quote unquote nervous and quote unquote introverted Shinji Ikari. Article by Spencer McCauley, published back on May 2nd, which was this past Friday. So let's take a look at this now. Apparently tired of waiting for the third child to Getting the Robot, Mobile Suit Gundam GQUX director Kazuya Tsurumaki says that when it came to fleshing out series protagonist Amate, um, in small quotes, Machu Yuzuria, his main creative objective was to make a character that was the complete opposite of Neon Genesis Evangelion's Shinji Ikari. And there's Machu right there in the first episode of the Red Gundam. Tsurumaki, who prior to his work on the latest Gundam entry, served as the assistant director on the original Neon Genesis Evangelion anime, before eventually being placed at the helm of Fooly Cooly and the four-part rebuild of Evangelion film series, provided this insight into the red-headed pilot's background during a recent interview with editor Nicolo Manaloto of the Philippines-based nerd news outlet Ungeek. Hmm. Huh. Asked by Manaloto as to how his prior work with Asuka, um, Rei, and Shinji influenced his alternate timeline take on the Universal Century, the director asserted, quote, the protagonist in Evangelion was a somewhat nervous kind of person who was also an introverted kind of person. So I think that at this time I wanted to make the protagonist much more proactive, much more dynamic and bold. Um, and sure enough, as viewers who have watched both respective series can attest, Tsurumaki was successful in his mission. From the very second her phone is damaged and she takes it upon herself to get what she's owed from the girl who caused it, Machu is shown to be brash and impulsive, often diving headfirst into a situation, expecting it to get through it based solely on her instincts and in the moment thinking. Oh, there she is right there. Contrast her with the aforementioned Shinji, who, due to his abandonment issues and own eventual traumas, like watching, in parentheses here, like watching Kaworu's head explode right in front of him, in parentheses, finds himself frozen with fear every time he's asked to pilot his EVA unit in defense of humanity, only eventually doing so after a third party reassures him, in parentheses, sometimes truthfully, sometimes simply to manipulate him, un parentheses, of his own capabilities. Admittingly, it'd be unfair to make a direct comparison between the two young pilots, given the drastic differences in tone, philosophy, and narrative direction seen between GQUX and Evangelion. Um, but at the very least, um, one can see how Machu, at the very least, gives Tsurumaki a completely different archetype to explore on screen. Evangelion is beautifully animated, but the most overrated anime of all time. Well, I think a lot of the surrealism is what threw a lot of people off with it too. Some of the more psychological thriller aspects of it is what kind of threw people for a bit more of a loop. That's probably what at least had some people going there. Further, while not directly related to either Machu or Shinji, when asked the same question regarding Evangelion's possible influence on GQX during a separate interview with a recently sold and likely soon to be defunct Polygon. Tsurumaki confirmed that while not explicitly the series concept of clan battles, 2-on-2 battle format primarily seen in underground Mobile Suit fighting rings, did have its roots in one of the former series' particularly famous scenes. Quote, the idea of clan battles, in bracketed A, was not directly influenced by Evangelion, unquote, said the director. Quote, however, in Neon Genesis Evangelion, there was an episode where Shinji and Asuka had to synchronize to attack angels, and in Evangelion, new theatrical edition, in brackets, the Japanese name for the rebuild quadrilogy, unbracketed, there was an episode featuring a double entry plug where two pilots had to synchronize to operate one Evangelion unit together. When depicting characters in battle stories, I found the idea of two characters having to cooperate interesting. So I'm now using that concept in Mobile Suit Gundam GQX. Now the whole idea of two operators operating one machine is not that quite original. Okay, they did it in Better Man. If you've ever seen Better Man, there's another one that will kind of rock your head a little bit. That had some psychological drama, surrounding mechas and people partnering up to operate mechas and all that, giant robots. Let's see. At current, new episodes of Mobile Suit Gundam GQX, and for those curious, that's a total of 6 U's simulcast every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on Amazon Prime. All right, so there we go with that one, with that article. So we're done with the articles now. So let me just go ahead and do this right here. All right, so now we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap up. And we do have some stuff to go over. As of course, first off, we're going to probably go back to Friday Night SmackDown first off, so we can get a look at what happened on there, as we're coming up on being ready for this Saturday's Backlash pay-per-view. On Friday Night SmackDown, which was live on USA Network from Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. Joe Testatori and Wade Barrett on commentary. Fraxium in their second match on the main brand, on the main roster on SmackDown. Axiom and Nathan Frazier defeated Los Garzas in the opening tag team match. Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton went to a no contest in their match as both Naomi and Nia Jax interfered in the match, attacked both wrestlers. Zelina Vega would become the new WWE Women's United States Championship, defeating Chelsea Green. In a number one contenders match for the WWE United States title, Drew McIntyre defeated LA Knight, and the main event. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was from last week. Oops. Oopsie. I didn't even realize that. Let's move ahead to the actual one from this past Friday, the 2nd. It also was on USA Network, coming from the Wells Fargo Arena from Des Moines. Now, some other interesting news that was talked about, of course. There were, the pro wrestling's version of Black Friday happened this last Friday with, following, of course, WrestleMania. There was a number of releases from the WWE that got a lot of heat for, as names like Braun Strowman, Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler all let go. Much of it was considered budget cuts, albeit there's been some back and forth online, as there was a report made out that one of the reasons why a lot of these talents were let go, which also included like Cora Jade, Kaden Carter, and Katana Chance, Riley Osborne, was that they supposedly were not working hard in training, which got some clapback from some of the released talent. Shotzi was also released, but they had, basically had their yearly purge after WrestleMania. Some of the Cora Jade accused some of the higher ups at WWE of body shaming her. Gigi Dolan, another released WWE superstar, clapped back saying, "No, my body tells me different. I was working out, every day." So, just a bad luck though overall for TKO Holdings and WWE corporate at this point. But another story that, of course, came out is the realization that WWE recently purchased the AAA promotion down in Mexico, and of course they're taking over a number of the contracts. Some people were thinking that some of these talents, including Alberto Del Rio, were getting new contracts. It wasn't that they were getting new contracts. WWE was simply taking over the current contracts. So now, granted, El Hijo del Vikingo has already made an appearance in WWE. There's some talk that maybe Alberto Del Rio may make an appearance, but people aren't sure because of his past history. But WWE has basically picked up a lot of those contracts. So, anyways, with that being said, let's get back to the correct. So from this past Friday SmackDown, Damian Priest and LA Knight went to a no contest. Fraxium, the second week in a row, won their match, defeating Pretty Deadly. They were undefeated since being called up. Aleister Black made his in-ring return to the WWE, defeating The Miz in just under 9.5 minutes. Carmelo Hayes in his corner. In a non-title match, current United States Women's Champion Zelina Vega defeated Piper Niven, despite Piper having Chelsea Green and Alba Fire in her corner. Ray Fenix defeated Santos Escobar. And the main event saw Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton defeat Naomi and Nia Jax. With that being said, of course, look ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw. As tonight's Raw, of course, will be the go home Raw before this Saturday's. And we'll get to some of the matches that have been signed for Backlash in a moment here. But on tonight's Raw, which will be on Netflix from the Chi Health Center in Omaha, Nebraska, WWE Women's World Champion Io Sky takes on Roxanne Perez. Rusev takes on Otis in a singles match, and Judgment Day's JD McDonough will be taking on Penta in a singles match. Now, as this is, there'll be probably a lot of stuff going on tonight because this will be the go home Raw before this weekend's Backlash. So let's kind of give a rundown of the card, as I do believe there were some matches added this past Friday night as well. So this Saturday's Premium Live event, Backlash 2025, takes place from the Enterprise Center in St. Louis, Missouri. So I had already previously announced undisputed WWE title match. John Cena defends against Randy Orton. Announced on last week's announced two matches announced on last week's Monday Night Raw. Lyra Valkyria will be defending the Women's Intercontinental Championship against Becky Lynch. Pat McAfee will be taking on Gunther as he tries to get some revenge for Gunther attacking him and Michael Cole a couple weeks ago. And then added this past Friday on Friday Night SmackDown in a fatal four-way match, Jacob Fatu, the current WWE United States Champion, will be defending against Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, and Damian Priest, following, of course, Solo Sikoa and Fatu's interference in the in Damian Priest and LA Knight's match. So that's what to look forward to on coming up this Saturday. So now go back over this past Saturday's Collision. On this past Saturday's Collision, as of course things are heating up en route to Double or Nothing, the finals of the Owen Hart tournaments. So in an eliminator, and the night opened up in a women's world title eliminator match. Toni Storm fended off the challenge of Lady Frost. Sammy Guevara won a $100,000 prize high-speed collision four-way match over AR Fox, Kevin Knight, and Roosh. Megan Bayne, in dominant fashion, defeated Harley Cameron. Brody King and Josh Alexander went to a time limit draw. Daniel Garcia answered answered Max Caster's open challenge and won in under a minute. And then, well, we'll get to that part later in a moment here. The Gates of Agony defeated Goldie and Ray Jazz in the minute 16, only to be challenged to a parking lot brawl by Big Bill and Brian Keith. And the main event saw FTR defeat FTR, of course, Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler with Stokely in their corner, defeating Kyle Riley and Roderick Strong of Paragon, 2 falls to 1 in the best of 3 match that led to Daniel Garcia coming out to challenge FTR to a match, I guess, coming up next week. Basically, he would challenge any one of them, any combination of them, whatever. He just came out with a crowbar and everything. But that's all that happened there. So there we go with the wrestling wrap up. So we're done with that now. So now let's start to wrap things up. Well, now with today being Monday, May the 5th, 2025, let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. History! So, all right, so first off, I'm going to head back 50 years ago. As on this date, 50 years ago today. On this date, 50 years ago today, back in 1975, Siegfried Stanky defeated Don Leo Jonathan to become the new NWA Pacific Coast champion up in Vancouver. Of course, this is a title that was that's defended. It was defended in the NWA Vancouver territory. That would be throughout Western Canada, up in the British Columbia area. But on this day in 1975, 50 years ago today, Siegfried Stanky defeated Don Leo Jonathan for the NWA Pacific Coast Championship, the Vancouver version of the title. There have been a few versions of it. So, anyways, with that being said, let's get ready to move on to the next piece of Nietzsche history, as it were. As next, we now will move ahead to the year 2005. On this date in the year 2005, Comics Wave Films OVA Haruo was released on this date back in 2005. It was basically about a delinquent kid who decided to take on the Yakuza. So on this date in 2005, 20 years ago today, Comics Wave Films OVA Haruo was released on this date back in 2005. Now we're going to get ready to move ahead to 2010 here. And on this date in 2010, Dark Horse Animation, the 35th issue of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dark Horse Comics, went on sale on its date back in 2010, 15 years ago today. It was sold for $2.99 with 40 pages. The story was The Power of Love, written by Brad Meltzer, penciled by Georges Jeanty. Andy Owens did the inking. The lettering done by Richard Starkings and Jimmy Betancourt, with Michelle Madsen doing the coloring. So, 15 years ago today, the 35th issue of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Dark Horse went on sale on this date. In 2015... Anyways, and 2010 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. It's also on this date in 2010. Mattel Studios' Monster High premiered on YouTube on this date back in on this date back in 2010. So 15 years ago today, Mattel Studios' Monster High premiered on YouTube on this date back in 2010. The series follows a group of teenage children of famous monsters in media and film who attend high school. Along with its feature-length direct-to-video films, the series serves as a platform to launch new doll characters. So, there you go. So with that, I'll wrap things up here, as it were. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.